I just want to mention a very beautiful Indian on Sukkahs. That it's a very Indian iskashis. We mentioned before about sleeping in the Sukkah. So if you look in Shulchan Aruch, Teishvu Kein Taduru. You know, the mitzvah, the Torah says about Sukkahs, Teishvu Shivas Yam. So the Chachamim learn out, what does it mean, Teishvu? To reside in the Sukkah? You should reside in the Sukkah as you reside in your home. And the Chachamim learn out there are two main functions you do in your home. You eat and you sleep. So these two things have to be done in the Sukkah. Which is, by the way, there's also a lot of Chassidus on it, a few Maimorim from the Rebbe on it, that a Sukkah has two opposite things in it. One hand, the Sukkah structure has to be a temporary structure. That's how it has to be built, halachically. Can have a roof, and even though this looks pretty solid. This looks like the bungalow we used to have in the country. The walls look like that. The window was like that. And probably would rain, they would leak in also. So it's probably maybe it was a kasher sukkah. So this is but it's still fart. It's a temporary structure. On the other hand, the sukkah teishvu ke'ein taduru. You have to live in the sukkah in a very permanent way. So it's like two opposites at the same time. The structure has to be a temporary structure. Your living in the sukkah has to be more in a permanent type of way you're living. So a lot of there's a few Maimorim from the Rebbe on this that discuss these two opposites, pashut halachically, in the Indian of a sukkah. So eating and sleeping are the two main functions that one has to do in the sukkah. So the Rebbe says that we've seen by the Hanhoga, the conduct of the Frierdiker Rebbe, we saw two opposites in his. I want to read you the Lashon, very beautiful. The Rebbe says we see by the Frierdiker Rebbe, which this has become the Minik Chabad, of course. By Achilu Ushtiya B'Sukkah, when it came to eating and drinking in the Sukkah, he was careful to the extreme. And at the Machmir Geven, he was very careful that even drinking water, which halachically you can take a drink of water outside the Sukkah, that even a drink of water he didn't take outside the Sukkah. And this was even on Shemini Atzeres, even in the rain. In other words, when you have all three things, it's Shemini Atzeres, which Mikra din you don't have to. Water, Mikra din you don't have to. When it's raining, Mikra din you don't have to. Nevertheless, the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't take a zip of water outside the Sukkah, even on Shemini Atzeres, even in the rain. So when it came to eating and drinking, he was careful to the extreme, and this is Taka the Minik Chabad today. This is something Taka we could be very proud of. When certain mashpia say, our minig is we don't make noy sukkah, we don't make the decorations, like the whole Jewish world does. Nevertheless, our noy sukkah, there's a lot of what's our noy sukkah, the sukkah itself, we build it behidr, but it's also the way we fulfill the mitzvah. Lubavitch, Baruch Hashem, we fulfill the mitzvah behidr. We use the sukkah. Sometimes you go around Chalamayis, you see different people. From Yidden, we're talking about from Yidden, they're drinking outside the sukkah, no problem. For Lubavitcher, you see that, Baruch Hashem, it's so ingrained in us. You look, it looks like the guy is serving Avodah Zarah. Well, he's drinking a can of Coke outside the sukkah. We can't, it's like so upgefrekt by us, it's so out of the question that it's so strange to us that we, Baruch Hashem, we could be proud of that. We can't relate to it even. So this is Taka coming from the context of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Rebbe says that by eating in the sukkah, he was extremely careful, even in situations where halachically you don't have to. However, when it came to sleeping in the sukkah, we saw just the opposite. Minat gezen, as is nit geschlafen in sukkah, nor bebayis, as much as he slept. But whatever a Rebbe sleeps, he did not sleep in the sukkah. And this is Taka the Minik Chabad, that we don't sleep in the sukkah, because the Rebbe says the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't sleep in the sukkah. So it seems two opposites. On one hand, he was extremely mahadir in eating in the sukkah, and when it came to sleeping in the sukkah, just the opposite. He was extremely mekel, very, very lenient, and not just lenient. He didn't do it at all. He slept a bias. And the Rebbe points out, halachically, this doesn't make any sense, because if you look in Shulchan Aruch, it would seem that the obligation to sleep in a sukkah is actually stricter than eating in a sukkah, because a temporary to eat something as a snack, which is called achilas ari. That's why water, a shahakel, that's not a suda. It doesn't have to be in the sukkah because it's considered a snack. A suda, mezainis, or hamaitzi, or agofen, that's has to be in the sukkah. But you take an apple, you take You make a eitz, you make a shackle, doesn't have to be in the sukkah because it's considered a snack. So halacha says that achilas ara, a temporary thing that you're eating, doesn't have to be in the sukkah. However, sleeping, even temporary, has to be in the sukkah. You want to doze off for a few, 10 minutes, you have to do it in the sukkah. Not even you're going to sleep for the night. Even a dremel, a little nap for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, has to be in the sukkah. So if you look in halacha, it would seem that if anything, you should be more mahadir in the sleeping more than the eating, because halacha is more strict by sleeping, in the sense that a temporary sleep has to be in the sukkah, a temporary eating, a snack, does not have to be in the sukkah. Nevertheless, the Frierdiker Rebbe, we see just the opposite, that he was mahadir by his eating and not by his sleeping. And this is taka the minig Chabad, that we do not sleep in the sukkah. Now, Bashkacha Pratis, last night I saw this. They had a stand by Crown and Kingston last night by Sukkah's B'Sheva. They were showing videos of the Rebbe. So it's a famous thing. I'm sure you've seen it. There was this, got his name. It was Rosh Yeshiva from Eretz Yisrael. Came by the Rebbe for dollars. It was not Sukkah's time. It was like Shavuos time, I think it was. And he said he was somewhere from Eretz Yisrael. He was Rosh Yeshiva from some yeshiva. And he said that he was asked by people who said that he should ask by the Rebbe, how come Lubavitch doesn't sleep in the sukkah? And you ever saw this? It's an unbelievable thing. And the Rebbe, whoa, he didn't know what hit him. It was taka a surprise. The Rebbe all of a sudden, it was like a whole sikha. The Rebbe, like, I don't want to, using the expression very loosely, of course, but the Rebbe, like, let loose on him. He was like, and the Rebbe the Rebbe didn't answer the actual question. The Rebbe was basically saying that whoever's asking me this just wants to make machlekes. This is something that already, the machlekes between Chassidim and Misnagdim has already been finished in the time. But Reb Chaim Volozhin with the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe was saying, the Rebbe was speaking to him for probably about 20 minutes. By dollars. It was by dollars. He went by dollars. His name was Ravi Kahana or something like that. He came with his wife. And it was like, the Rebbe very sharp, and the Rebbe was like very upset. So the Rebbe didn't even address the actual question. In this sikha, the Rebbe addresses the question. But to him, he didn't, because the Rebbe obviously felt that it's just being mecharcheted, even just those that are looking to stir up trouble. It's not because they really want to know, and segeit zeon. And the Rebbe is saying you're just rekindling the flames of machlekes, which has already been extinguished years ago already between Chassidim and Misnagdim, and you're trying to, and the people who put you up to this, and you see at the end, I felt bad for the guy in a certain sense, because at the end he asked the Rebbe for a bracha. He says, I hope I didn't upset the Rebbe. He asked for a bracha. So the Rebbe says, Mer felt eigentlich that they're going to find out, the people who sent you here, they're going to find out that you asked a bracha by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So, like the Rebbe was, you actually asked a bracha, the Rebbe was like hesitant to give him a bracha. You watch it, you like cringe, because finally then he introduced his wife to the Rebbe. Her Zayda wrote a sefer, it's a famous thing. The Rebbe said, oh, the Einayim Lamishpat. So I think the Rebbe gave her a bracha. But the Rebbe says, Mer felt echnish, you're not, that's all you need, that they're going to find out back home that you asked the bracha by me. So it was, wow. But they showed last night, they show videos of the Rebbe, different things, the Rebbe on the balcony, different, and they had this clip. I was watching it. I saw it a number of times, but I was watching it again. It's unbelievable. It was like a whole sikha. The Rebbe went back to history with Reb Chaim Volozhin and with the Rebbe Rashab, and they extinguished the machlekes and the.
You know what the video's called? You didn't feel that the guy was being provocative? I did when I saw the video. I feel like he was provocative.
Yeah, but I didn't think he was expecting this. Obviously, that's why the Rebbe didn't even address the thing. The Rebbe didn't even get to the sleeping of the sukkah. And then the Rebbe said, and this is what's bothering them. The Rebbe says there's so many children in Eretz Yisrael that don't know the tzuras of an aleph. There's thousands of children that don't know an aleph. The Rebbe says they only know an aleph because they speak Ivrit. They speak Hebrew, so they know an aleph, but not Kamatz aleph ah. They don't know the aleph of Anochi Hashem Elokecha. They don't know the Yiddish aleph. They know the Hebrew, in their language, but not the Lashon Kodesh.
You know what the video's called?
I mean, where you could get it?
Yeah, where I could find it. Is it done?
you could, it was Tafshin Nun, like Shavuos time. It was a Sunday dollars, and he went by and did I saw the time on it. If you want to narrow it down, it was about 4:00 in the afternoon on Sunday. It was around Shavuos time, I think like a week or two after Shavuos, and wow, it's really something. So the Rebbe didn't even address the issue. The Rebbe didn't explain to him, Taka, why we don't sleep at the Sukkah or anything, because the Rebbe felt it's Sukkah just to make a machlekes. So here the Rebbe Taka addresses. So the Rebbe says, how do we explain this? And this is Taka the Minhag Chabad. We're very careful here, but very lenient over here. Let's read another paragraph, and we'll get to the point how the Rebbe explains this. Unbelievable in the Skashas. The Rebbe says, one might venture to say that we know, of course, there's a famous halacha on Sukkahs that says, "Amitztayer min Sukkah, pater min Sukkah." That's the heter why when it rains, you don't have to be in the Sukkah, because if you have tsar, if you're uncomfortable from being in the Sukkah due to the rain, let's say, you're exempt from being in the Sukkah, which we don't rely on that, of course. But the halachically, that's why you wouldn't have to eat in the Sukkah. So the Rebbe says, by sleeping, one might venture that, we know from ourselves, sometimes you need more comfortable quarters to sleep, more than eating. And sleeping, and especially Sukkah's time is already, the nights are a little cooler, so to sleep in the Sukkah is a little uncomfortable. So maybe that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't sleep in the Sukkah, is Menal Pi Alocha Pater from sleeping in the Sukkah. As the Taka says in Shulchan Aruch, in cold places where the nights are cold, where it's uncomfortable to sleep at the Sukkah, ain't tzarich lishin b'Sukkah. You don't have to sleep at the Sukkah, because hamitztayer patur min Sukkah. The Rebbe says, so maybe that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe, because sleeping, unless you're mamash in a warm climate, you're in Miami, but in most places the nights are already chilly enough that you can have tzar from sleeping. The Rebbe says, but you can't answer that, because the Rebbe says anybody who knows my father-in-law, anybody who knows the Frierdiker Rebbe knows that that's not the reason he didn't sleep in the Sukkah, because he was uncomfortable. You can't answer that, because by the Frierdiker Rebbe, hat the Gashmi the Ketirche nit teifes makim gewen. Physical, something that was physically uncomfortable, played no role by him. Maybe you all know the Frierdiker Rebbe. You think a man like that, physical discomfort played any role? He was his whole life was Mesiras Nefesh, fighting the communists. He was Mesiras Nefesh no matter where he was. Unbelievable. If you go through the life of the Frierdiker Rebbe, it's just one. The famous in the Sicha Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel, the Rebbe uses the expression that till we came to 770, Es Geulah Yiskos Lubavitch in its history has gone through 10 exiles. The Alter Rebbe was in Lozhne, then Liadi, then we were in Lubavitch, then the Rostov, and then if you count up, the majority of our exiles were all by the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe went from Rostov to Leningrad, then he went from Leningrad to Riga, to Malchavke, then to Riga, then he went to Warsaw, then to Advatsk. And the Rebbe even counts when he came to America, to New York, till he moved into 770. He was in Manhattan at the Greystone Hotel, then he went Pesach to Lakewood. The Rebbe counts that as part of the exile. So the Frierdiker Rebbe really was a Novanot. Till he came to 770, he was a Novanot. He was not, no menucha. It's unbelievable. And constantly he says that he's fighting the communists, and he's fighting then the World War II broke out when he was in Warsaw with the Germans, and then the Mesiras Nefesh in America was fighting the apathy and the indifference that he encountered here. There was no physical harm here, Baruch Hashem. It was safe as far as that's concerned, but people didn't care. It was a certain kaltkeit, indifference, apathy as far to Torah and to Yiddishkeit, and he was fighting against that. So this is a man that's constantly, so physical discomfort, you think makes any impression on him? So you can say he didn't sleep in the Sukkah, it was a little too cold for him. Rebbe says that's not the Frierdiker Rebbe, that's not my father-in-law. So therefore we cannot say, when it comes to a mitzvah, he took physical discomfort into consideration. In fact, we see this by the sukkah itself. That by eating in the sukkah, he did not rely on the heter when it came to raining. When it was raining, I'm starving a sukkah, patim in a sukkah. To eat in the rain, and if any women here have done this, but eating in the rain, Baruch Hashem, the sukkahs, we've done pretty good so far. Trying to give an ayin hara. You remember? This is giving away your age if you remember this. I was a kid then. Sukkahs Tafshel Lamed Vav. It's a famous sukkahs that it basically did not stop raining the whole sukkahs. From the first night till the end, it was raining constantly, and it was windy. Sukkahs fell apart. There was later articles. Someone showed me they found an article. I remember then, but now they brought it from the archives from one of the Jewish newspapers, that Lubavitch was really the only Jews in the whole New York who ate in the sukkah, who fulfilled the mitzvah of sukkah this year, because most people didn't eat in the sukkah. It was raining, just finished. It was raining literally non-stop, the whole sukkah, from beginning to end. And sukkahs fell apart, it was windy. So eating in the sukkah, in the rain, is not so comfortable. In fact, I think this is a scientific fact. When you eat in the sukkah, you'll see this, that when it rains, the drops that fall down from the schach, so before they fall down, they become very big. They grow and grow and grow and grow, till they get so heavy, they plop down. And they have built-in radar, like a radar-guided missile, these little drops, these big fat drops, and they always find to come down the back of your neck, no matter how you protect yourself. I once tried it. I protected. I put on it got inside of it. It plopped down right in back. It doesn't plop over here. It plops in right over here. No matter where you're sitting. It's like the Murphy's Law in 770. Murphy's Law. When there's the guy that always fixes the benches in 770. A nice Russian fellow. Always put on tefillin with him. Many years, he's the carpenter in 770, so he always goes around checking everything. The benches are good and tight, and the screws and everything, and if anything's broken, he fixes. Murphy's Law, no matter which bench you're on, he's always fixing the bench you're sitting on. He's always coming to the bench that you're on. I once tried it. I was sat on this bench. He's coming there, so let me try. I went the other side of the shul. 3 minutes later, he's coming with a screwdriver to my bench again. I said, it's mamish badika menusa, whichever bench you're on, he's coming to you. So this drop, it's badik and nusas, always, no matter where you sit in the sukkah, it's going to plop down the back of your neck. And it's always cold also. It's a cold, big, fat drop that ends up in the back of your neck. So it's pretty uncomfortable. Nevertheless, we do it. We eat in the sukkah in the rain. So we don't take into consideration, because the Friedrich Rebbe didn't take into consideration in the sukkah itself, mitzvah put up in a sukkah. So therefore the Rebbe says, we must say that him not sleeping in the sukkah was definitely not due to any tircha v'tzar gashmi. Was not due to any physical discomfort. A person like the Friedrich Rebbe says, that's totally not something that he takes into consideration. When it comes to a mitzvah, when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, physical discomfort plays no role by him also. So therefore, it must be something deeper than that. So the Rebbe goes into the whole Inyan. Then I want to just get to the highlight. That is a famous word the Rebbe says of the Mittler Rebbe, that he told Chassidim, "Vi kemen shlofen makif in the bin." Right? I'm sure you heard this many times. He said it in a question. How could you, like a rhetorical question, how could one sleep in makif in the bin? So whole in Chassidish was very bekitzer. The godly light in the sukkah in the Chassidus is called the makif of bina. Why punkt bina? That's a whole discussion, maybe for another time. But the makif part is pretty simple. We could see it. The Rebbe once spoke about it. That the mitzvah of sukkah is a makif. We perform it in a makif way. As we see now, we're all sitting in the sukkah. We're totally surrounded. The sukkah surrounds you. And the Rebbe said there's very few mitzvahs that you're totally surrounded by the mitzvah. Usually, when you do a mitzvah, it takes up a part of your body. You put on tefillin, it's your arm and your head. You eat matzah, it's your mouth and your swallowing and the digestive system, whatever. It's usually only a certain part of your body. Few mitzvahs are encompass the whole guf. is one of the few exceptions that Rebbe says is mikveh. When a person has to immerse in a mikveh, you have to totally be surrounded by the water. Right? Of course, we all know the halacha is even one strand of hair that sticks out could invalidate the tefillah. Nevertheless, the Rebbe said sukkah is even more, because sukkah, mikveh, is only the person's body without their clothes. You can't go with your clothes in the mikveh. So it's just the guf mamish. Sukkah, you come in with your clothes, with your table, with your chair, with your shoes. In other words, it's such a powerful makif that it could take everything along with it. A mikveh could only take your body. It can't take your clothes. It can't bring the kedusha in your clothes. It could only bring it. Sukkah could bring it in your shoes, in your table, in your chair, in your food, in your bottle of seltzer. All your inyanim, your kalim, your clothes, your kalim, is enveloped by the kedusha of the sukkah. Very, very, very unique mitzvah. And so therefore it's called makif debina, which is a tremendous godly light. Right? We all know that makif, that's like soiviv kalamin, as opposed to mamala kalamin. If that's the case, the Mittler Rebbe said, how could you sleep in such a with such a great, powerful, godly light is? You can't even sleep in such a place. How could you? Such a holy place, how could you sleep there? Because we know sleeping, eating, one could ask, how could you eat there? Because eating is a different, it's a sleeping is, Rebbe goes in tarichas that sleeping is a little different than eating as far as many inyanim, of course. So the Mittler Rebbe said, the Rebbe says from here we see that the fact that the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't sleep at the sukkah was due to a spiritual discomfort, because he cannot sleep in such a holy place with this makif debina. By the way, this is also a whole discussion. It's not been conclusive. A lot of research has been done on it. The Rebbe says here quite clearly that the reason we don't sleep in a sukkah today is because of the conduct of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Even though we're going back to a vort of the Mittler Rebbe. So, when did Lubavitcher Chassidim not sleep in a sukkah? From the Mittler Rebbe or from the Frierdiker Rebbe? So, the Rebbe says quite clearly, it's a minik Chabad from the Frierdiker Rebbe. Seemingly, it should be a minik Chabad from the Mittler Rebbe. But, so there's a little, it's a little not so clear about this. There's a lot have been written, some people have done research on this. What has been from the Mittler Rebbe till the Frierdiker Rebbe. But Al Kaponim, I spoke to some people. I remember I spoke to an older woman, and she says she remembers clearly her father, which was, I think she was still by the Rebbe Rashab. She says she remembers clearly as a child her father slept in the sukkah. Chassidim of the Rebbe Rashab, they slept in the sukkah. So the minik Chabad of not sleeping in the sukkah started, as the Rebbe points out, started because of the Frierdiker Rebbe. But how do we reconcile this with the Vart of the Mittler Rebbe? But that's another issue. So b'chol eifin, this is a spiritual discomfort. The Rebbe then goes and explains an interesting question. I won't get into next. I want to get to the main part at the end. What I want to highlight here, that we all know that if anything, Chassidus enhances our performance of a mitzvah. Once you do Chassidus, you do a more chayis, with lebedikait, you appreciate it more. Right? Learn a Maimeh Chassidus on any mitzvah, any yontif. I always tell the girls in school, my students, take before Rosh Hashanah, before Simchas Torah, before Sukkot, before Chanukah, and learn a Maimer of the Rebbe, that you'll appreciate the yontif so much more. You'll appreciate the yontif unbelievably more, so much depth to it. You learn a Maimeh Chassidus, what's going on in this yontif. So we know it, and Chassidus and Bechlal, Chassidus brings a varmkeit, a warmth, and a geschmack, and a chayis, and a performance of mitzvahs. More than, unfortunately, other Yidden who don't learn Chassidus. So if anything, Chassidus should enhance our performance of the mitzvah. What happened in this case? Like this, I was sleeping in the sukkah following the din in Shulchan Aruch. Once I learned in Chassidus, it's makif debina. Oh, now I can't sleep in the sukkah. Now I can't fulfill the mitzvah behidder and sleep, because it's makif debina. How can I sleep in makif debina? So it seems here that learning Chassidus is actually diminishing our performance of the mitzvah instead of enhancing it. So the Rebbe explains how that works. Also, the Rebbe goes off on a whole thing halachically. The difference between eating and sleeping in the sukkah, even though both are brought in Shulchan Aruch, but the real mitzvah is eating, which means sleeping is more by default. Eating, in order to fulfill mitzvahs yeshiva sukkah, you have to eat in the sukkah. Sleeping is, you can't sleep in the house, so you go in the sukkah. But I don't want to sleep. That's fine. I'm not sleeping the whole sukkah. You didn't not violate anything. If I eat outside the sukkah, that's taka. I didn't fulfill the mitzvah of yeshiva b'sukkah, and that's why taka halachically we only make the bracha leishe b'sukkah when we eat. People who sleep in the sukkah, you don't make before you go to sleep. And before hamapil, you say leishe b'sukkah, because it's more by default as opposed to eating in the sukkah, which is more straightforward, the fulfilling of the mitzvah. The Rebbe brings also here from the Rebbe says, so halachically, if somebody eats in the sukkah, and especially the way we do it, behiddur, they have fulfilled the mitzvah of yeshiva b'sukkah behiddur, mahadim and mahadim, even though sleeping they didn't. The Rebbe brings also from the Gemara about Simchas Beis HaSheva, the Gemara in Sukkah that describes the celebration in the Beis HaMikdash of Simchas Beis HaSheva. So it says that the Tanoim who would do the dancing, right? The dancing then, Taka, were done by the greatest tzaddikim. Everyone else watched. The Rebbe said, Taka, now we have the Mila that everybody should dance Simchas Beis HaSheva. But then the Tanoim dance, everybody stood around and watched. The women went up in the Ezes Nashim on balconies, right? I'm sure you learned this in Hilchos Beis HaBchina. The regular Ezes Nashim in the Beis HaMikdash did not have balconies. The women were on the ground, and the men walked in from there also. Right? I'm sure you learned this in Hilchos Beis HaBchina. The women, the way you got into the Ezes Yisrael, you walked through the Ezes Nashim, and that was actually the biggest one part of the Beis HaMikdash. The biggest one section was the Ezes Nashim, just like in 770. The Ezes Nashim was the biggest part of the shul. So the Ezes Nashim was the biggest part. It had the most square amas. The only time the women went up was they went on the night of Chalamayid, the first night of Chalamayid. They went right after Yantif and they built these wooden balconies, which normally you were not allowed to build wood things sticking out of the wall in the Beis HaMikdash, the Rambam says. But this they built, and the women went on top of the balconies and they watched the celebration, which was the actual dancing was done by the Tanoim. So the Gemara says that the Tanoim menamne akasvet adodi. They were up a whole night. They would, after they drew the water, they would dance and celebrate a whole night, and they would catch a dremel. They would catch a little nap on the shoulder of the guy next to them, the Tana next to them. As they would dance around, they would lean their head on the shoulder of the person next to them, and they would take a little dremel. They would take a little nap. We said before, halachically, you can't take a nap outside the sukkah. This was not in a sukkah. It was in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. It was not a sukkah. Nevertheless, they did it. These were Tanoim. So the Rebbe points out that you could fulfill the mitzvah in its entirety. They for sure kept the eating in the sukkah like a Lubavitcher Chassid does. They were mahadim in a mahadim as far as that is concerned. And therefore, they definitely were fulfilled the mitzvah behiddur, even though they took naps outside of the sukkah in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe takes care of that even halachically. But now the main part I want to highlight is the Rebbe's question now is, that's very nice for the Frierdiker Rebbe. Frierdiker Rebbe, great tzaddik, who feels the makif to bina, he feels the godly light in the sukkah. He sees the shpizin when he comes in, right? We all know the famous, the Rebbe quotes it many, many times, that the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he revealed to us that we have the chassidish shpizin, he pointed around the table. And he said, here is the Baal Shem Tov, here is the Magid, here is the Alter Rebbe. He pointed to the sea. He pointed around the sukkah. So he saw them there and he said, here they are. Which, by the way, is amazing. Do you know when the Frierdiker Rebbe revealed this? Here in 770. He didn't reveal this in Russia. He didn't reveal this Dafka here in 770. In a sukkah on the porch. That's the porch sticking out from the second floor. On the side where we have the big sukkah, the porch from coming out, that's where the Frierdiker Rebbe sukkah was, and that's where he revealed about the Chassidish Shpizin. So when you hear these things, it makes like the story. He revealed here's the Baal Shem Tov sitting. So if it happened in Mezhebush and Mezrich, these towns, like the stories goes along with them. See, it happened in Brooklyn, New York, right next to the train station of the number 2 train, the IRT. So it doesn't fit in. Yeah, it happened in Mezrich, and Mezhebush, and Neville, and Kremenchuk. Like the names of the towns fit to the stories. But when you say, but no, the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't do it in these places. He did it dafke here when he came to New York, here in 770s, when he revealed the Chassidish Shpizin. It's really an amazing, put everything in perspective. It's really amazing. This was Dafke revealed here in New York. So the Frierdiker Rebbe sees the Ushpizin. He feels the Makif the Bina, so he can't sleep in the Sukkah. What about us? How do we come along for the ride? It seems we're getting a free ride over here. We don't feel any tsar from the Makif the Bina. I can tell you for myself, the first night of Sukkah, I was very tired from working, making the Sukkah. And after making Kiddush, sometimes it's Badik and Manusa, you drink that cup of wine, you're out. Shortly after that, my wife said, well, why you fall asleep? I said, you drink a cup of wine, we'll see where you'll be. I'll tell you, we're not on an even playing field over here, If first drink the wine, and then we'll see you. If you won't fall asleep, then we can take a talk. So I fell asleep for 10 minutes. The talk wasn't so long. Because by mistake, she dropped a plate of soup on my lap. I think it was by mistake. So it wasn't that long, but I slept for 10 minutes. I'm stammed the Rebbe, and so I didn't have any tsar from that. It was actually pretty geschmack. It was pretty geschmack. So, what is this? We're coming along for a free ride. The Frierdiker Rebbe didn't sleep in the Sukkah. We're not sleeping also. The Frierdiker Rebbe's Taka felt the reason applied to him. To us, it doesn't apply. Nevertheless, the Rebbe says, that's the Minik Chabad. So listen how the Rebbe explains. Why is it a Minik Chabad? Why is it a Minik Chabad for everyone not to sleep in the Sukkah when seemingly the reason doesn't apply to us? So this I'll read. It's the last ice, and this is very, very powerful. Is das Borin then bepashtus? The Rebbe has basically 4 answers. Answer number 1. Chassidim, you're right, 100%. Doesn't apply to us. We don't have tsar from the Makif Debina. We'll have more tsar from a bee. You see, when the bee comes in, everybody goes, oh, the bee's here. Everyone's jumping and looking. And it disrupts the whole thing. One little bee's flying around. Which I think this year, Baruch Hashem, was very little bees. Right? Did you see that?
I had a bee.
You had bees in yours?
I had a bee, and it was a very, experience. It came in, and I just said, I'm just going to be grateful for the bee, and I just said the Geulah is here, and I was looking at the bee. It was a moment,
Okay,
it was my guest.
Okay, it's a ganze Meise. Okay.
Just try to see the godliness in the bee.
Okay, very good.
As long as they're not allergic to
I never knew the bee was such an emotional thing. Okay, but tak is good. But my sukkah so far, today was the first time we saw a bee. The whole time there was no bee. But we'll have more tsar from that. So the Rebbe says, you're right. 100%, we don't feel it. But doesn't matter. Because Chassidim, being we're mekusher, we're connected to our Rebbe. We learned the Rebbe's Teir al Manas Lasis. The Rebbe throws in a little monkey wrench here. When you learn the Rebbe's Teir, it has to be al Manas Lasis. It has to affect us in our Maisa B'Peil. We go in the ways of the Rebbe. Is minig Rabbi saying b'yadei. We follow the Rebbe's conduct. The reason why the Rebbe does it could not apply to us. But doesn't matter. The Rebbe does it, we do it. Obviously, this is a whole discussion in itself, but just very big kids. Obviously, this applies something that the Rebbe does in public. He does it in the way he wants you to see it. If you went and you climbed up a ladder and looked in the Rebbe's window and saw the Rebbe do something that you shouldn't have been looking at, I saw the Rebbe do it, I'm going to do it also. That doesn't apply to you. We're talking something that's done by Rabbim, something that's done in public, by Farhesia. That carries a whole different weight to it, as the Rebbe said many times. So this was a known conduct. Everybody knew the Frierdiker Rebbe did it in a very public manner. He didn't sleep in the Sukkah. It was a well-known thing. Amanas Farsim. So we follow the Rebbe's conduct, even though the reason doesn't apply to us, because minig Rabbi saying b'yadeim. So it's mamish iskashus. We're connected to the Rebbe. We follow what the Rebbe does, even though the reason the Rebbe does it doesn't apply to us. It doesn't matter. The Rebbe brings actually a little story from the Gemara. The Rebbe brings a little story from the Gemara Taka from Sukkot. It's a famous expression. I'm sure you heard it many times. It's a very Chassidish expression. It's from the Gemara, but it's used a lot in Chassidus. That the Gemara says a story about the Rav Acha. So just briefly, what this is referring to, it's a din in the Dalad Minim. So the Hadassim, there's a discussion in Gemara how it has to grow. So if you ever saw on the package of the Hadassim, it says Meshulish. It has to grow three together. When you follow the spine of the Hadas, the three leaves, they come out on the whole spine, three. So as a discussion in Gemara, sometimes Hadasim you'll find they grow two and one. There's two together. The third one is a little off. So there's a discussion in the Gemara, is that also okay? So one opinion in the Gemara says no, that's possible. It has to be mamish, masholosh, all three together. If it's two and one, it's possible. You're not Yitzhak the mitzvah if you use such a dasim. Then there's the opinion of Rav Kana, one of the great Ameroim. Rav Kana says, you should not use such esek. But b'di'evet, you use it, you are Yitzhak the mitzvah. B'di'evet, it's okay. So the Gemara says a story that Rav Kana had a student by the name of Rab Acha, and Rab Acha would lechatchila look for such kind of b'di'evedike hadasim. When he would go to the store to buy, when he would go on Kingston Avenue, Rab Acha, I think when I was buying my hadasim, the guy next to me looked very holy, maybe he was Rab Acha Taka, and he asked, I want the 2-in-1. You look at because the package says, we have 3, mamish the best mother. He says, I want 2-in-1. 1 second, why 2-in-1? Because he said, this is the famous expression, Kiven the nafik mipuma de Rav Kana. Being it came out of the mouth of my Rebbe, Rav Kana, that it's also good to show how strong and to show strength to the words of my Rebbe, I will lechatchila use something my Rebbe said is b'di'evet also good. It's a very deep chassidish word. I mean, it's in the Gemara. But, because 1 second, your Rebbe said that this is b'di'evet good. Lechatchila, you should go for the mishulish. But to give strength to the words of his Rebbe, what his Rebbe said is also good. He did lechatchila. And that's the expression, Kivan the nafik be put in a kana. It came out of the mouth of my Rebbe, I'm following what my Rebbe said, to show strength. So the Rebbe says similar to that, to show strength to what the Rebbe is doing, we following, even though the reason the Rebbe is doing it doesn't apply to us. I'll just tell you a quick story about this idea from another perspective. It's a famous Maisa. The Rebbe brings it in the footnote in the Maimel Chadedi that the Frierdiker Rebbe once, before he was Rebbe, he once went to visit his father-in-law, Rebbe Tzemach father, Rebbe Avram Schneerson, who was a grandson of the Tzemach Tzedek. He lived in the city of Kishinev, Rebbe Avram Kishinev. So he went to visit him. So before he went to say goodbye to his father, the Rebbe Rashab. So the Rebbe Rashab said, I'll give you a present for the way. What is the present? What kind of present did I give? He told them a Maimech Chassidus. That's the famous story also. That the Rebbe spoke about it once, very geschmack. The Rebbe Rashab, right in the beginning, when he was Rebbe, he was a very young man. He was in his 20s. So, by the Stalkas of the Ramash, he was 22. So he became Rebbe, he was 22 years old. So he became a Rebbe. So in the early years of his Nesias, he had a chavrusa that he learned with. It was the Poltava Rav, Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Bespala was his name. He was a lot older than him. The Rav of Bespala was a very prestigious rabbinic position then in Russia, and they learned chavrusa. Got a big schus to the Bespala Rav. He was chavrusa of the Rebbe Rashab, in the early years of the Nesias. So it's related that one time, as they were learning, the Frierdiker Rebbe was a child, and he was sleeping in like a little bed. And Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai at one point got up to walk around a little bit, to stretch a little bit, so he walked around the room. And he looked at the Frierdiker Rebbe laying in the bed, the little child. And he told the Rebbe Rashab that I could see on the face of the child that he was born b'kedusha v'tara. I could see on his physical features that he was born in a holy manner with kedusha v'tara, which obviously Frierdiker was born b'kedusha v'tara from his parents, the Rebbe Rashab, and his mother, Rebbe Sishana Sab. But he says that the Bespala Rav says, I see it on his physical features. So the Rebbe Rashab said that at that moment I was so overcome with a love for the child, I wanted to go over and kiss him. But I held myself in, and instead I wrote a Maimech Chassidus instead of the kiss. Later, when the Frierdiker Rebbe was older, I think by his chassan it says, the Rebbe Rashab called him in and took out the Ksav Yad of the Chassidus. says, this is that maimer I wrote then when I wanted to give you a kiss. And he called it, this is a chassidische kush. It's a chassidische kiss. So in the Sikha, the Rebbe brings the story, and the Rebbe says, why couldn't he do both? Why couldn't he give him a kiss and write the maimer? Why did one have to come at the expense of the other? How the Rebbe explains this is a beautiful Indian. So the Rabbeim do this as, instead of the kiss, he gave him a maimer chassidus. The present for his trip, the Rebbe Rashab told this Frierdiker Rebbe a maimer chassidus. So he went on his trip. He went to visit his father-in-law. When he came back to Lubavitch, he went back into his father, and his father asked him details. How was your trip? What did you do? So the Frierdiker Rebbe says, I did something. I took the liberty to do it. I'm not sure if I should have done it, but I did it l'payil. What did you do? The present you gave me, the maimer chassidus you gave me, for me, I told it to my father-in-law. Because when I came to my father-in-law said, he used the expression in Yiddish, he said, "Effen de kran, lomazen vasotaris kommen." Like, open the faucet, let's see what's going to come out. Open your mouth, let's see what pearls of wisdom are going to come out. So when my father-in-law told me this, I said that maimer you gave me as a personal present, I said it to him. So I don't know if I should have done it, but l'payil I did it. So the Rebbe Rashab said, okay, that was fine. That's okay that you did it, but just please tell me over how you said the maimer. So the Frierdiker Rebbe started repeating the maimer. And at one particular point, the Rebbe Rashab stopped him. He says, 1 second, is that how you said it? By this part? He says, yes, that's how I said it. The Rebbe Rashab said, you didn't say it correctly. Because when I told you the maimer, at this paragraph, so to say, I prefaced it with the expression, Geulah yesh leima. Possibly, we could say the pshat like this. You left out the words, possibly. You said it as a fact. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, the famous expression, this is brought in the Maimer, and the Rebbe brings in the footnote in the Maimer l'chadedi, that was is by dir an efsher is by mir avadei. What something is a possible by you is for sure, is a certainty by me. If the Rebbe says something maybe, for us it's already a certainty. Right? Can you imagine? Someone goes, writes into the Rebbe, on a certain, you could have, everyone's talking about doctors and what doctors are saying, and that's a topic for itself. It's good the one who asked the question left, so I got off the hook. But imagine the doctor can have the biggest specialist in the world. Say, you need this surgery. And you write into the Rebbe. The Rebbe says, maybe it's not such a good idea to have the surgery now. What are you going to do? 1 second. The specialist says 100% you need it. The Rebbe says maybe not to do it. You're going to run away from that doctor and hospital as fast as your feet could carry you. 1 second. The Rebbe didn't say. The Rebbe said maybe it's not a good idea. Because the Rebbe's maybe, once the Rebbe's putting a doubt into the Indian, any normal chassid, you run away from there as fast as you can. And that's the expression, was is badira efsher is babira vadi. What's by you a maybe is by me a certainty. Which definitely we could take a lesson. Imagine something the Rebbe says as a maybe is a certainty. Something that the Rebbe says as a certainty. How certain it has to be by us. When the Rebbe said, Giyas mangol aschem, and Mashiach is already here, and working in the world as Mashiach, and open your eye, all the unbelievable things, and Nalef Nun Beis, the Rebbe didn't say, maybe he Giyas mangol aschem. Maybe Mashiach is working in the world as Mashiach, etc., etc., etc. So definitely, how certain it has to be by us. If his maybe is a certainty, how certain it is. So anyways, so it's a similar idea. So was is by dir an efshus by mir avadei. So that's what the Rebbe is saying here. Even the nafik mipum the Rav Kana. Rav Kana said it as a second that's also good by the chassid, by Rav Acha, his student. It became first. So that's the first answer. That number one, chassidim, we do what the Rebbe does, even though the reason doesn't apply. Then now the Rebbe gets that to the angle of the tsar. There's also a tsar, and this is really very powerful. Number two, neisa binyanenu. The Rebbe is going to point out we do have tsar if we sleep in the sukkah, but not from the mak of the bina. That we don't feel. What do we have the tsar? So there's three ways the way the Rebbe looks at it. What's the tsar? Der nit firen sich bepoil kan hogas Rabbi saying b'chol shavshe will cause you a tsar. In other words, you go in the sukkah and you know that I'm going to sleep now, but the Rebbe is not sleeping, so I'm not conducting myself like the Rebbe. That itself is causing you tsar. So Yitzhar is coming from not doing what the Rebbe is doing. So Yitzhar is not coming from the Makiv Debina. Yitzhar is coming from doing something that the Rebbe is not doing. The Rebbe is not sleeping. I'm a Grabba Jung and I'm sleeping. I don't feel it. That's causing me tzar, and I'm not conducting myself like the Rebbe. Also, where could the tzar come from? Being that the Rebbe wants you to feel, just like the Mittel Rebbe said. The Mittel Rebbe, the Minyan Gemont von Chassidim. The Mittel Rebbe wanted his Chassidim to feel, and he said, "Vikem Shlaf and Kivta Bina." They should feel the light, the godly light in the Sukkah, to the point that they couldn't sleep. So therefore, at the Mittel Rebbe the Rebbe has even higher expectations from us, definitely. But the Mittel Rebbe also had a lot of had very high expectations. The famous word the Rebbe always quotes when what did the Mittel Rebbe want when two Chassidim meet in the street? What should they talk about? Okay, so we should talk about that when we meet in the street. Talk about Mashiach. That should be our first conversation. So he had, but I think actually the Rebbe has even higher expectations from us. This maybe we can verbring, maybe another occasion, because this is a whole topic for itself. It's the whole night of Sukkot to verbring on this. But the Rebbe's expectations of us is, it's the most demanding lifestyle. A chassid, one second. You have to daven barichas, and then you have to learn, and the chassidus, and nigla, and the dvar malchus, and the kutatayt of the week, and the Rambam, and the chitas. That's besides, and we always feel guilty. And then, so you didn't go mitzayim. You went mitzayim. You didn't daven barichas. Daven barichas. I didn't learn the dvar malchus. I remember I was talking about the Rambam. I remember when the Rebbe started the Takana the Rambam, Achron Shal Pesach Tavshim Amdalen. We were all thrown off. I know myself personally. I just got a handle on Chitas then. I just got a handle. Baruch Hashem, I started, doing Chumash Mamash every. All of a sudden, I just got a handle. Rebbe throws in 3 prakim of Rambam. He says, what is this? And B'chlal, we're always guilty because we never feel. This is again, it's a whole story in itself. This one's a story the Frierdiker Rebbe said the difference of Lubavitcher Chassid, the Polish Chassid. Just tell you the end Nekude. There was one Fabring in Chai El Tafshin. The Rebbe repeated the whole story with all its details, very geschmack. But essentially, the Frierdiker Rebbe goes through the life of Lubavitcher Chassid and Polish Chassid, the different lives that they lead. The Lubavitcher is bittul, and the Polish is always given covet, and he's given when he leaves to go to his Rebbe, he's given a nice send-off from his town. And his wife, they make a whole Tzeischa L'Shalom for him, and people give him kvitlach to take. When he comes to his Rebbe, he's given a seat up front, and he's brought into Yechidus, and he gets a lot of covet. And when he comes back, he gets a bruchim aboim, and everything. Lubavitcher, if you ever write these details, he tells his wife, I want to go to Lubavitcher to see the Rebbe. What? 1 second, go get a job. What are you doing? Hey, what are you run Lubavitcher? He bangs him over the head with a. The women have that bad rap. They always bang over the head with a pan, a frying pan. Baruch Hashem, I never got banged over the head yet. Maybe I'm still in for a surprise. But so far, Baruch Hashem, I have to say, I never got banged over the head. So then he comes, when he comes to Lubavitch, you ever get a red carpet when you come into Lubavitch? Nobody looks at him. He comes into the shul, a kid jumps on his head, you're standing in my place, where you come. So not only he's in the back, he doesn't hear, he doesn't see, he's pushed, he's standing there jumping on his head. He comes back home, he's like, he sneaks into town, no one should see him. And he goes, no, Shafiq goes through all the details, it's very, very geschmack. And the Rebbe repeated, Chayel Tavshinu, the Rebbe went through the whole story. And he says at the end of their lives, so after 120, they come up Lamaila, so the Polish Chassid, they ask him, okay, let's see what kind of life you led. Okay, did you daven? Did I daven? Of course I davened. Did you learn? Of course I learned this, I learned this and that. I'm a big guy. Oh, you have a Rebbe? Of course I have a Rebbe. They call in the Rebbe. The Rebbe vouches for him. Yeah, he's my guy. Leave him alone. He's, give him the royal treatment. So, wow, you davened, you learned, you did this, this. You have a Rebbe who vouches for you. Straight to Gan Eden. They call in the Lubavitcher Rebbe, geschlept sich herein. Okay, let's see. Did you daven? Daven. I'm embarrassed to say that's called davening. Right? You learn a little chassidus. That's called davening. That says gedavened. That's not, we always guilty. You learn a little chassidus. We never daven properly. Okay, 1 second. You didn't daven. Did you learn? I'm embarrassed to say that's called learning. You did this. I'm embarrassed to say that's called fulfilling a mitzvah. I didn't have kavan. I'm embarrassed to say that I did that. That's how you do a mitzvah. The Polish always thinks everything he did was the best. Lubavitch, everything he did. He
Could have done a lot better.
Okay, 1 second. Let's see. You have a Rebbe? Rebbe, I'm Posher embarrassed. Me, Rebbe? The Rebbe's Holocaust Mamish. What shaykhs do I have with the Rebbe? Okay, 1 second. What kind of? Let's see. I can't figure you out. The Bezdin Shalmaila says you didn't daven, you didn't learn, you didn't do mitzvahs, you have no Rebbe. So he's not cool. They send him straight to the other place. So the Friedrich Rebbe Taka says, he concludes the story. He says, so the Polish ends up in Gan Eden, the Lubavitch ends up, we have a good mazel over there, we end up the exact opposite place. But the Friedrich Rebbe concludes, was is better? What's better? Their Gan Eden or our Gehenim? What's better?
Where is this bit to map?
It's a story of Rebbe Chai El Tavshin. The Rebbe repeated the whole story with all details, and then the Rebbe took off on it. And in other words, it's a whole different approach. With Chassidus, it's just Legadlis. It's in a Rosh Hashanah Maimah. Legadlis, Vayayim Taka B'Shefel Gadol. The bittul of Rosh Hashanah, Kol Shana Min Ameitza Karasika. How the Rebbe explains, it's a bittul. The Oivdim and Nidachim is from our bittul. That it's partial Legadlis, Legabi Reim Musakel, the greatness of Hashem. Our whole Aved is considered nothing. In that outlook, in the outlook of Chassidus. Which, by the way, makes us very empowering. That's also another topic for itself. The bittul of Chassidus, some people make a mistake. They think bittul makes you it's like a bottle, you're a doormat, and this takes away your self-esteem. It takes away, just the exact opposite. Bittul, according to Chassidus, is the most empowering because you tap into the unlimited. That's the only way that you could tap into the Elikus and to the unlimited keiches. After when you bittul, when you're your own mitzias, you can't tap into the bli gvul. The only way you could tap into bli gvul, dafka in the bittul. That's also a whole different outlook. How sometimes there's a misconception when you talk about bittul. But in any event, so that's what we're discussing over here. That Lagabi, with the outlook of Chassidus, is you always feel guilty, and because that says gedaven, that says gelernt, that says getar, that says. And the Rebbe is demanding, the Rebbe wants, and the yeshiva, and the girls, and you do this in Mivtzayim, and then you do this in Iskashus, and then you didn't do the Varmalchus, and you do Lekut Teira. Average Shabbos, what you have to learn, you don't realize it. You have to learn this, and the Rebbe wants the Chassidish Parsha of the week, so the Teira and Lekut Teira. Then you have to learn the Lekut Sichos of the week, then you have to learn the Varmalchus, and then you have to, and in addition, you have to do this, and then that, and davening, and daven Barichas, and have the Fabringen. And it's unbelievable, really a very demanding lifestyle. So we were saying that Rebbe puts a lot of trust in us. The Rebbe has a lot of things very highly of us. That the Rebbe trusts we're able to do all this, and maybe taking a cue from the Mittler Rebbe, that the Mittler Rebbe take Shaltis by his Chassidim. So that's what the Rebbe is saying here. Where does Yitzhar come from? So it's even a little deeper. That the Rebbe wants you to feel the tzar. So the Rebbe says, so even though the Oyer HaSukkah is not mevalva, that's not really disturbing you sleeping, but you have tzar, why don't I feel the Akif Debina? It's the same unbelievable Nekuda. What does a Chassid feel?
Thank you. Have a happy holidays.
Good Yantiv.
I've been having
good seeing you.
migraines from the phones. So, anyways, I hope you will check out the prophecy from the first day of Sukkah if you didn't get a chance. It mentions the plague right before Mashiach comes, so it gives us some more insight into what's going on. Okay, well, God bless you. Happy Sukkah. Be careful with the smartphones. They're very dangerous for your health. Thank you.
Okay. There's another thing that's a danger for us.
Hey, we didn't hear it.
5Gs are coming soon.
No, wait. It's not a laughing matter. There's like 200 doctors.
We want to hear
I know.
Rabbi Samuels has to
Just
say.
be
Thank
careful,
you. Thank
okay?
you.
Be careful.
We want to focus
Thank you.
on the positive on Sukkot.
Yeah.
All the negativity should disappear with
Okay, have
Sukkot.
fun. God bless you.
All right.
You think you finish with one thing, there's another thing. And the Shari is krichen for them. So the Rebbe says it's an unbelievable point. Where do you have the tsar from? That you don't feel. The Frierdiker Rebbe has the tsar that you feel. That's why you can't sleep. Where do we have the tsar from? That I don't feel. And that's the outlook of a chassid. Unbelievable how the Rebbe presents it. A chassid, we don't say, I don't feel it. I'm happy about it. I'm a grubbe jung. I'm coarse. I'm desensitized. I don't feel it. Very good. It bothers you. That's the minimum. It has to bother you. So, why am I so coarse? Why am I desensitized? Why don't I feel the Eir HaSukkah? Why don't I feel the Makif the Bina of the Sukkah? So, the fact, the Frierdiker Rebbe went into the Sukkah, tried to sleep, maybe the first time when he tried it, there was the Makif the Bina, and he had Tsar, so that's it. He felt it. We have, if we fall asleep soundly, maybe the side things will make us, if it's cold or something else, but the Etzem Sukkah, we could sleep very soundly from it. That will cause a Tsar. 1 second. And that's a hallmark of a chassid. We don't say, you have some people that say, you ever hear sometimes you say a certain thing, I'm not on that level. Right? You ever hear sometimes? I'm not on that level. What do they do when they say they're not level? Not level, I'm happy about it. If you're saying I'm not on that level, it should bother you. 1 second. You don't say, I'm happy I'm not on that level. They usually use it as an excuse. That's not for me, I'm not on the level. Not on the level, why not? 1 second. The Rebbe wants you to be on the level. The Rebbe wants you to feel it. The Rebbe, you should feel it. 1 second. So it should bother you that you're not on the level. It should bother you that you're coarse to that point. It should bother you that you're desensitized, that you don't feel what you should be feeling. You're not happy about it. It's bothering you. You're mitzvah. So look how the Rebbe looks at it. Just the opposite. By the Frierdiker Rebbe, his mitzvah came from actually feeling the Eir Makif. Our mitzvah is, we come in the Sukkah, we don't feel the Eir Makif. That's causing us. Why am I so desensitized? Why am I so coarse? Why am I so grub? That I don't feel this Eir Makif, the Sukkah. Unbelievable. So the Rebbe says, we have tsar, but from the reverse. From the exact opposite. And finally, the Rebbe says this is another way of pointing out where our tsar comes from. And afilu einer, let's even have someone, it doesn't bother him that he's grub. Unfortunately, there are some people like that. They're coarse, it doesn't bother them that they're coarse. Chassidish Yid, really, of course, it bothers you. Why? I want to be a little more refined. I want to be a little more edel. I want to be a little more sensitive. It bothers me why I'm not sensitive. I mean, we could talk, I'm bringing this also for many hours. It brings a lot of stories and piskamim. There's a piskam in Ayem Yem, I forgot which day it is, that the Rebbe brings there, the word that you have to have a geschmack to a yidna ateva. I forgot which day it is. It's very beautiful, Ayem Yem. That it's supposed to be to the point that you should enjoy doing another yid a favor. How many times we do sometimes a favor, sometimes we don't do, but even when we do, begrudgingly. You're supposed to do it, you're supposed to enjoy it. So if we end up doing a favor, how come I don't have a geschmack? When I do another yid a favor, I should push it, enjoy it. I should have a geschmack. And the fact, if I don't have that geschmack, it should bother me. Again, we could say many, many things. That's what the Rebbe is saying. It should bother us why you're not on the level. You don't just say I'm on the level, not on the level, and I'm happy about it. So that's the mitzvah. And finally, even a little deeper. Even someone, unfortunately, it doesn't bother him. He's a grubbe jung. He's coarse, desensitized, not so edel, not refined. And it doesn't bother him why he's like that. But, minimum, this is the minimum for a chassid. This is in order to be a card-carrying chassid, so to say. Minimum, it has to bother you that the Rebbe wants you to feel. And you don't feel. Es ist, ich habe mit Star, für was der Wort von Rebbe, dann nehmt ihm nicht. This is mamash unbelievable in his kashas. And essentially, the Sikha of Chav Chasnissen, tut alles, was kennt. The Rebbe said then, the Rebbe wants you to feel. The Rebbe is saying, how could it be that there's a Lubavitcher Chassid in Tafshin and Aleph, after 41 years of the Rebbe's Nesias, and Mashiach is still second on his agenda. We'll give the benefit of doubt, it's second. The Rebbe says it's not the first thing on your agenda. Today I'm busy with something else. Tomorrow, and that's what the Rebbe says. And that's the Rebbe says, what more can I do? I've spoken to you for the last 41 years. Maimer after Maimer, Sicha after Sicha, Fabringen after Fabringen, from the first Basi Legani. This is what I'm all about. And it's still somehow, there's a Lubavitcher Chas in Tavshin Aleph that Mashiach is number 2 on his agenda, not number 1. And the Rebbe says, what more can I do? Speak another 41 years. The Rebbe could do that, but the Rebbe obviously felt at that point that that's not going to do it, even though after that, all the Sichas and Aleph and Beis was after Chavches Nissen. So the Rebbe gave us the greatest things after that. But in India, the Rebbe says, I'm giving it over to you. Because the Rebbe wants it to come from you. Now, the Rebbe says it, you should scream Admasi with an emes. Minimum, a chassid has to say Admasi to Kachsich HaMashiach, because the Rebbe wants you. Really what the Rebbe wants, not just because I told you. After 41 years of me talking to you, thousands of hours of Fabringen, you should feel it yourself, not just because I told you. It should be internalized by you. You should realize it, not just because. But minimum, that's what the Rebbe is saying here, minimum you should want, because the Rebbe wants. So minimum for a chassid, he has to kachsich Mashiach, because the Rebbe wants you to kachsich. Really, the Rebbe wants, if I explained everything to you already, it should be coming from you. It should be already so much part of you that it's coming from you, not just because I told you so. But even if there's a person that doesn't have that, minimum you should want because the Rebbe wants you to want. By Lubavitcher Chassid, Mashiach has to be number 1 on his agenda, because by the Rebbe it's number 1, and the Rebbe wants, by you it should be number 1. So really it should be, you should appreciate it on your own. That's the Rebbe saying, if I told you thousands of hours of Fabringens and Sichas and everything till now, and definitely after an Aleph and a Beis. Keep in mind, this was before an Aleph and a Beis. All the Sichas and an Aleph and Beis. Definitely after that, there's no way around this. So, but really the Rebbe wants, it should be internalized already by you. But minimum, you should want because the Rebbe wants. And that's what the Rebbe is saying here about the Sukkah. Minimum is, you should have tsar, why, that the Rebbe wants you to feel. In other words, I don't feel, that doesn't bother me. But what bothers me, the Rebbe wants me to feel. And I don't feel. So this is 3 angles how the Rebbe explains how we taka have tsar, but from another angle, not from the actual makif the bina, either from doing something the Rebbe is not doing, or from being coarse and not feeling the makif, or minimum, for the Rebbe wanting us to feel, and I'm not feeling it, that's causing me tsar. The Rebbe is expecting something of me. The Rebbe is trusting me for something. The Rebbe wants something from me, and I'm disappointing the Rebbe. I'm letting the Rebbe down. That itself is bothering me. Like I once heard from Mashpia, we just mentioned the Sikh of Chavches Nissen, with the Rebbe, so I heard from Mashpia, he said, the Rebbe asked for 10 people. So what's up, Pshat? When the Rebbe is asking for 10 people, Halavai, there'll be 10, was on sich ein action. So, he says, this is the biggest inspiration, this is the biggest incentive. Someone could say, one second, the Rebbe is asking for 10, Lubavitch Kenai Nahara has 100,000. So, I'm not from the 10, I'm from the 99,990. What does the Rebbe want? The Rebbe doesn't want, that's exactly opposite of the Sikha. The Rebbe wants everyone to be of the 10. The Rebbe doesn't want 10 and everyone else will not do it. When the Chkibbus B'tzayich was to everybody. So what is the Rebbe saying 10? So his look on it was, imagine you have the general looks out on his army. Beautiful, it looks so strong, so impressive. There's 100,000 soldiers standing there, straight, everything in order, straight line, everything shiny, everything in precision, everything. Unbelievable, looks unbelievable power. The general looks out, the king looks out and says, I wish there were 10 soldiers here who knew really what's going on and really doing what I really want you to do, even though everything looks so impressive. You would say, wow, this is so disappointing for him. He has this unbelievable army, but that's not really what he wants. He says, no one got it. The Rebbe is looking out on Lubavitch in Tavshin and Aleph, and in a sense, the Rebbe is very disappointed, even though it's so great, and we're doing unbelievable things. And can I know that the Eilam has grown, and we have communities. The Rebbe's community has grown tremendously, Baruch Hashem, and Lubavitch communities in London and in Montreal and Kfar Chabad. And we have yeshivas, thousands of Talmidei Atmimim, and girls, and Talmides, and Batei Chabad, and Shluchim, and Balei Tshuva, etc., etc. Unbelievable pulis. So the Rebbe should be very happy and very satisfied. No, the Rebbe's Sicha Chavches Nissen. This is not what I'm talking about. And halavai there will be 10 people who get really what I want here. With all the great and holy things that are being done. And very important. And the Rebbe is saying, somehow we lost, what's the expression? We lost the forest for the trees? Or something like that. Now, somehow we lost sight of really what's going on and really what I want. So on one hand, it's very, you think the Rebbe must have been so disappointed. Tashin and Aleph, after 41 years of the Rebbe's Nasias, the Rebbe looks out and says, halavai there'll be 10. After he built up an empire, from when the Rebbe became Rebbe in Tafshin Yud, until Tashin and Aleph, the Rebbe built an empire all over the world. And the Rebbe says, halavai there'll be 10. One hand, it's very depressing. It's right. The Rebbe must be so disappointed. You don't even want to think about it. On the other hand, this is what I hear from my Shpia, he said just the opposite. The Rebbe is not here to make anybody depressed. The Rebbe is here. This was an incentive. This was the biggest inspiration incentive. This should give you the biggest kayach, the biggest inspiration, the biggest incentive. Not to let the Rebbe down. Just the opposite. And everyone should be part of the 10. So that's essentially this point. That you should want, just because the Rebbe wants you to want. So really unbelievable hayra that of iskashus that we have here on this from the minig of not sleeping in the sukkah, based on the minig of the Frierdiker Rebbe. That's all how it trickles down to the average chassid was all iskashus. Either from the simple, whatever the Rebbe does, I do because I'm a kush, I'm connected to the Rebbe. Which also I once saw a letter of the Rebbe based on this discussion. I once saw a letter of the Rebbe. It's in English Kaddish. I think it's in Tafshin Yud Aleph. And the Rebbe writes to someone. You can see there was some correspondence before. I checked up the other letters. It seemed there was this chassid. He wanted to go to college or something. Tafshin Yud Aleph. Shortly after Tafshin Yud. And he wanted to go to college or something like that. And the Rebbe said, you can't do that because you're a Talmud. I think the Rebbe uses that lashon there. You're a Talmud of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Chassid of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and you're Mekusha to the Rebbe. So if you're Mekusha to the Rebbe, wherever you go, the Rebbe goes with you. If you're tied with the Rebbe, so wherever you go, you pull the Rebbe with you. So if you're going to college, you're pulling the Rebbe there. Wherever you go, you pull the Rebbe there with you. You have to be careful where you go, because the Rebbe is coming along with you. So he writes to the Rebbe, so he came up with a good idea. Okay, you're right. I hear what you're saying. He tells the Rebbe, but I came up with a good idea. I'm going to take a sabbatical from these kashas. People take sabbaticals. I'm a professor of this, but for this year, I'm taking off. This year they call it sabbatical. So for this year that I want to go to school, to the university, wherever he was going, to the college, I'm taking a sabbatical from these kashas. So I won't be pulling the Rebbe with me into the college because this year we're not mekusher. So the Rebbe says, nice try. But it doesn't work, because maybe from your side, for some weird reason, you're entertaining such a thought. The Rebbe says, I can't imagine a chassid wants to take a sabbatical from his iskashus. But even if you're entertaining that thought, keep in mind, iskashus is a two-way street. Once you're mekusha to the Rebbe's mekusha with you. And the Rebbe never takes a sabbatical from his iskashus. The Rebbe never, so it's not going to help. Your sabbatical won't help, because the Rebbe never takes a sabbatical, and the Rebbe is always mekusha to you. So wherever you go, you're pulling the Rebbe there with you. Mishlep Dorten, the Rebbe Arain, with you. So that's the first way. Pashuk mekusha, whatever the Rebbe does, we do. Then the Rebbe takes it from the angle we do think I have tsar, but such a skachus angle. What's our tsar from? Number one, either that we're doing something the Rebbe is not doing, so we have tsar from that, or we have tsar pasha that we don't feel it, because we're coarse and desensitized. That itself is causing us sorrow. We're not happy about it. A chassid is not happy that he's not refined and not edel, and he can't feel it. And number three, in that regard, at least the Rebbe wants you to feel. You should have tsar from that. The Rebbe wants you to be edel and refined and to feel the eir makif, the bina of the sukkah, and you're letting the Rebbe down. And the fact that that's causing you the tsar, not the eir makif or even the lack of not feeling, but letting the Rebbe down. That's causing the tsar. And this is all highlighted in this minig that we have of not sleeping in the sukkah, based on the skashas to the Frierdiker Rebbe, which obviously is the skashas of the Rebbe. So really something very, very amazing. And as the Rebbe concludes here, V'chein binyanenu, that being lepoil, that you're sleeping in the sukkah is connected with tsar, because it's not behesem to the ratzon of the Rebbe, it's not compatible to the ratzon of the Rebbe, is a patim na sukkah, and that's why that's the minig Chabad, why we don't sleep. And so it's really all these kashas, unbelievable. The Rebbe concludes, v'yiratzin, as mezol zeicha zayin bekarev mamish, so sukkahs oirei shel Levyasan, the famous Indian that is going to be a sukkah made from the oil, the skin, so to say, of the hide of the Levyasan. So this Levyasan is going to get a lot of use from all its parts. The beklalis, the freisa leinu sukkah shleimecha, we're going to be spread over us a sukkah, just like we say before. It's all encompassing. It spreads over all of us. Sukkah shleimecha, sukkah of peace. Kol reuyim kol Yisrael leisha b'sukkah achas. That always quotes the Maimon Chazal that Yidden are roy to all be sitting in one sukkah. And there's also an Amaima. The Rebbe says the Dalad Minim is also Lachtas, but there's a difference. Sukkah is even greater, because by the Dalad Minim they were different. They were Chiluk. Zemi said they were all different entities, and we put them together. The Sukkah is Lechatchila. There's no difference between one year and the other. There's Lechatchila. There's no Chilukim. It's Lechatchila Freis Aleinu Sukkas Shleimecha. It's like this is a famous. They've also mentioned it on a number of occasions. A story of his father. I'm sure you heard the story. That the Rebbe's father, Rebbe Yitzchak, went to get smicha by the Brisker Rav. He got smicha from the Brisker Rav, one of the few people that he gave. So part of it, he had to spend some time there and follow when he got shilas, the Brisker Rav, how he answered the shilas. Like it's called shimush, that you do to become a Rav, like a hands-on experience. So there was one time that someone came in on Sukkot to the Brisker Rav. It was Shabbos Sukkot, and he said, we have a problem, that we have this courtyard, that a number of people, their apartments, their homes, whatever it was, open up into the sukkah, into the courtyard, and we built a sukkah there, and everyone's eating in the same sukkah, but we forgot to make an eruv. So seemingly we cannot carry any food from the home into the sukkah. So what should we do? So the Brisker Rav turned to the Rebbe, and he says, what do you say about this? So the Rebbe always quotes this. So the Rebbe said the answer, and the Brisker Rav accepted it and says, that's right. That it's okay, you don't need an eruv. Because the sukkah itself is an eruv. Meaning, what's an eruv? What's the idea behind the eruv chatzedus? They're like this, it's a takana from the Chachamim. Really, minat Torah, you have a courtyard, it's a Rishus HaYachid, everybody could carry there from the homes. But because it's like different homes and opening up, it looks a little bit like a Rishus HaRabim, and therefore, in order to be able to carry there, we have to make an eruv that we make everybody like one, so everybody gives a little food, and usually we do it out of Pesach, because the matzah doesn't get spoiled, it could stay a whole year. Everybody gives a little bit, participates, so now it's like all the members of the courtyard became one unit. And then we make the Tzura HaPesach, the different dinner minute. So we're in one gate, and we're all participated, so we're all like one. So Rabbi Leivik said, in the case of a sukkah, you don't even have to do that, because the sukkah itself is the eruv. The sukkah itself makes everybody one. So really unbelievable. So that's what the Rebbe is saying here, and the Brisker Rav accepted. The Rabbi Leivik says that's taket. It's true. That's taket. They didn't. And so they didn't. They were fine. They were able to carry from their homes into the sukkah and vice versa. So this attack the Freisa Leinu Sukkah Shleimecha. So the Rebbe says we should have the Sukkahs Oirei Shel Yasin and the Freisa Leinu Sukkah Shleimecha, the Geulah of Mashiach, which is made in the Makiv of Sukkah, is already made. The Geulah of the Geulah, the Geulah Hamitis VaShleima Al Yidei Mashiach Tzidkenu uBemheira B'Yameinu Mamash.
Amen. Can I start? All the way in the beginning, you said something about chassid has only what his Rebbe says. He doesn't go look for anything else, because otherwise it's like...
It's a chazaka that a true Talmud only says things he heard from his Rebbe. He doesn't say... And we use it even in halacha, that it's a chazaka, that we hear from him, that means his Rebbe said it. That's a real chassid. You don't say...
What happens if you hear from somebody, or you hear things and it gives inspiration? Is that kind of like not being true? chassid by hearing from, all these WhatsApps that go around and like very inspiring stories, and you spread them. You spread them around, but the question is really if that's kind of like doing the opposite of what you say. Like what is really the right thing? That's,
Well, first and foremost,
where are we up to in our day and age? We're maybe not yet on that level, or should we aspire to
no,
that?
I think this is one of the hallmarks of a Lubavitcher chassid. Lubavitch, we excel in this. A Lubavitcher says always something from the Rebbe. You get up to speak. They ask you to speak by your nephew's Sheva Brachas. You say the Sikha from this week from Parshas Lech Lecha. It's ingrained in us. We always say over something from the Rebbe.
Is it okay also
It's what?
Is it okay also to hear other stories, or is that kind of...
What's to hear other stories?
You hear stories from different people, and this love, that love, or even just I don't know what these websites, I forgot what they're called.
What?
Yale Gold, he tells you these stories, the miracle stories that took place. You know what I mean? Like there are a lot of miracle stories that people are telling.
Right.
Not at all from the Bible.
Right. Wait, so even from that, the Rebbe wants you to do that. Right? The Rebbe said, Vayeshev, Tavshin and Beis, that we have to be mefarsim the miracles, that's Negea to the Geulah. So if something has, that's a hayra of the Rebbe to be mefarsim miracles now. Even though traditionally by Chassidim it hasn't been done. Chassidim looked down because it was looked more as a chitzainistic thing. Chassidim did some chassadik, they did. It was chassidus, tell stories, miracles. They looked at it. Of course the Rebbe does, but the Rebbe says now it's negea. Right? It's a chiddush of our time. So saying over a story like that, that's a hayra of the Rebbe. So